Welcome. You've got
digital folklore.
Hi, I'm Perry Carpenter.
And I'm Mason Amadeus.
This is the Digital Folklore Podcast after the episode. So that means you listen to this after you've listened to episode 2 of season 2 because you'll be confused or have things spoiled.
The other thing I realized, though, is when we post them at the same time, this one shows up above the other one.
It does, but it should be labeled as bonus.
Yeah, which is true. It's so hard to figure out how it's going to land in different podcatchers.
Yes, some of them, one I saw, it doesn't even categorize in the same thing. It just like falls below everything else. So you have to go look for it. So It is somewhere within whatever podcatcher you prefer. It might be above, it might be below, it might be beside, it might not replicate. It's somewhere. But don't listen to this until you've listened to episode 2 of season 2 because fun things are afoot.
Yes.
What is afoot, Mason?
What is afoot is, well, a lot, I suppose.
It's an appendage at the end of a leg.
I realized I had started speaking before I realized I could make that joke, and I was trying to see how I could walk back to it, but I couldn't. It didn't have legs to put a foot on. So, see, episode 2, a lot less ambitious in terms of sound design, partly by accident, but partly by design, because like my approach always has been, although I want to expand it more, is very diegetic. All the sound is supposed to originate in the scene. I'm picturing a visual thing and then just putting in all the sounds you would hear if it was filmed on location. And there wasn't a lot of room for the sort of illustrative creative sound design, which is, putting music under talking or weird buildups, stuff that doesn't originate in the scene. So it's pretty simple sounding, at least. There's stuff going on under the hood, but it's the boring, simple stuff.
Yeah. There's a little bit more Digby in this episode, though, right?
Yeah. Trying really hard in writing it to make Digby more of a valuable member of the team, because there was a charm right to a person who's on the show who cannot speak, and you just you can assign any emotion, motive, and personality you want when Digby's a raccoon that doesn't have language. We gave Digby language, and now we need to give Digby personality, and I want to try and flesh out more about him, his lore, what he's like.
Yeah. Well, you have to ascribe more purpose too, because you're given more virtual screen time, more purpose and more value other than just being there and being cute pitter patters and something off camera that people can make stuff up with. We also learned that Digby wants to be able to use foul language, but can't for whatever reason. So,
Yes.
So what's the thought there?
Well, I mean, the thought was that it would be funny, but in the true fashion of everything that we seem to do, that is going to tie into a bunch of other stuff that ends up happening.
And we want to make it a family-friendly show. So Digby won't just let it fly. Digby may want to, but is going to get cut off.
Of all the recurring characters, Digby's the most likely to swear like a sailor. So it's funny if he literally is unable to.
Yeah, I think the frustration. Digby's life is actually pretty hard. I mean, he's been taken into this. I mean, not only does he live with you in whatever situation he finds himself in and is relegated to eating whatever scraps you have laying around, but then gets sent to a vet, experimented on for a while, comes back having the gift of language, but not necessarily knowing what to do with all of that, being able to Google things, but having complete unfettered access to the internet in your brain isn't necessarily always a good thing, right?
Yeah, which we will see more of as the season progresses. What does it mean if you have internet access in your brain? If you didn't catch the after credits scene from this episode, I suggest giving that a careful little listen.
Mm-hmm.
I had a lot of fun writing this one, I think. Even if the sound design isn't the fun part, I stuck a lot of tiny little tidbits in this one that I hope ring well for other people, because for the first time I was trying to write what you know. People always say that. And so what I know is this specific weird corner of the internet and a lot of unrelated random facts. So squeezing those in, all the references in the beginning is where throwing the ball around. I was a massive Homestar Runner fan, so to be able to throw that in. Neopets and Webkins, my little sisters were obsessed with. I was obsessed with Newgrounds. Club Penguin was a whole thing. I don't know if these will necessarily hit for everybody, but I think for the people that it will hit, they're going to appreciate it.
My kids were huge Club Penguin fans. And when Flash got taken out of the thing, actually, I think before Flash was retired, Club Penguin went away. And then they found somebody who had made a replica of it and put it on another site. And then I think they also went to archive.org and pulled it up. So there was a lot of people out there that had a love for these old sites that are now deprecated that are finding ways to resurrect them, which is its own bit of folklore.
It is. Well, and I actually did a bit of a deep dive on a bunch of the little tiny factoids that ended up in this. One of them was Club Penguin. It did get shut down. There was a whole flipping the iceberg thing, which is kind of a cool, I wanted to work it in, ended up cutting it from the final version of the script. But in Club Penguin, there was a big iceberg that you could hang out on as one of the zones. And this idea just started with someone in Spread that, hey, if we get enough people to stand on one side of this thing, maybe it'll flip over. And so it was this thing people did for ages, just all cluster on one edge of this iceberg. And one of the final gifts from the developers was they did end up flipping it over for them, which was really cool. But then the story gets sad because it all ends in greed. Club Penguin shuts down. Replicas start popping up. People even remade it without using the original assets. And Disney went after them like wild. Took them down. Not because they want to put it back up, but because they don't want anyone potentially making money off of their IP. So.
Oh, now it's just sad.
Yeah. Both Club Penguin is dead. Long live Club Penguin. Same thing with LimeWire, which we talked about, which I used a lot when I was younger. Pretty sure I got a copy of Adobe, or actually at the time, Macromedia Flash from LimeWire when I was a kid to make animations to put on Newgrounds. It was a specific era of the internet that I miss.
Yeah, and now everything is new, shiny, NFT, monetizable fun, right?
Yeah, when I Googled LimeWire and I saw what it is now, my heart broke into 1,000 pieces. The first Google result, LimeWire, the new AI-generated NFT marketplace.
Oh.
I wanted to throw up.
Is it actually owned by some of the same people, or did it fully get scrubbed from the internet and then somebody just resurrect the name?
It's that one, the latter.
Okay.
The people who do it now have nothing to do with the original people. Here's a little fun factoid too, because I guess that's just the mood I'm in at the moment. LimeWire works on, it's a peer-to-peer network, right? So there's no centralized server. It's person to person. It runs on the peer-to-peer network infrastructure Gnutella, GNU-Tella, which was developed by Justin Frankel, the person who makes Reaper, the audio editing software I use. He's also the guy who created Winamp and all of the skins for Winamp and the music visualizer for Winamp. Justin, for this guy, I fell down this rabbit hole too in the process of writing this episode. He worked for AOL. AOL bought Winamp after a while. It got really big. And so he was working for AOL and he developed Gnutella, and he kept putting that up on the AOL company servers for people to download. And AOL was getting mad. You can't stop. People are using this for piracy. You have to stop. And they forced him to take it down. It kept slapping his wrists as he was putting up things that people didn't want him to put out. I want to meet and talk to Justin Frankel really bad, because Reaper is the best audio editing program I've ever used in my life. It's incredible. And also all of these other relics of the internet, he somehow had his hands in, and I had no idea.
Interesting. Well, maybe if he's listening, probably not. Justin, give us a call. Hello at eighthlayermedia.com. Or if anybody knows Justin or how to get in touch, or has an email, or is really good at research and stalking people.
Yeah. Let's start a campaign to get me to talk to the guy who made Reaper.
Definitely. What could go wrong?
Yeah.
So tell us, we're in episode 2 here. This is a 10-episode arc. Where does this fit narratively, and who are the guests, and what purpose do they serve in this?
Yeah. So unintentionally, the first season we talked about, we followed a traveling episode, at home episode, traveling episode, at home episode. Sort of accidentally did that this time too, where there's kind of more of an at home episode. As far as the purpose that it serves is really just, we had a lot of things that were interesting, but somewhat unrelated. And we wanted to make sure we could share them. We recorded that interview that you and I did with Lauren Shippen and Cherokee McAnally just after we had done the first episode of Digital Folklore. So that audio has aged.
It has, yeah.
But we wanted to make sure we had a good place to work that in. And you had found Cassandra Pfeiffer from, how did you get in touch with Cassandra?
Cassandra Pfeiffer did a lecture on Mark Norman's Folklore Podcast lecture series. So Mark, who is the wizard in episode 1, runs a number of different folklore-related projects. And one of the things that he does is he has these folklore lectures that are not part of the podcast that you can go buy tickets for, you can buy a season pass for. And she had this great lecture on folk groups and the things that divide us and the things that bind us in those groups, and got into a lot of the fun things that we kind of brought back into this interview within this episode as well. So I thought it fit in directly with, almost too well, with the things that we wanted to explore this episode.
Yeah. And you can still you can like buy the replays, right? Like you can go there now and like get.
Yeah, you can buy the replays. They're like insanely affordable as well. I think it's like $5, maybe. I could be wrong.
Help Mark cover the costs kind of thing, which is cool.
Yeah, exactly.
The stuff Mark's doing is really cool. We had talked about trying to do a series of diving into different internet communities based on platforms. So like, let's talk about Tumblr. Let's dive into Reddit. But that didn't necessarily take shape because there's not so much, because platforms now are so wide ranging and broad that there are traits of each of them, but that's not as interesting as getting even more specific. But Tumblr was a unique use case.
Yeah.
And then talking about that concept overall with Cassandra Pfeiffer, this was just sort of the perfect way to bring those ideas together and get them out there.
Yeah. I mean, I think if we really wanted to go down the rabbit hole of exploring different online platforms, there's probably a couple ways we could go. But Tumblr was a great entrance into that kind of conversation because it does have this really unique user base that not everybody knows or understands. It attracts certain people. It has a very interesting way of creating community and doubling down on that community, and really, understanding fan service. So I think that worked really well. But if we were to expand that later on, it'd be really fun and interesting to look at Tumblr versus Reddit versus like 4chan versus TikTok. Those are widely different in the way that people approach those different platforms, because TikTok is a folklore creation machine, essentially. You put up a video, you can stitch onto it, you can respond to it, you can grab the audio, you can put green screens behind everything. So it's made to be interacted with and have this multi-generational format versus something that is participatory in a different way like Tumblr. But when we get to Tumblr, there was this great use case around Goncharov that really, really made sense for us to explore, because it is about a group creating folklore around this thing that they just kind of willed into existence.
Yeah, all because of this silly tag that was on a pair of boots.
Exactly.
Which is like, it's if we were to do a deep dive about how each platform affects and shapes the folklore that's created on it different ways, I think that would be neat. But I think what happens is that we end up covering aspects of that every time we talk about something different. So it like bleeds across the things we talk about. So this was a good way to dip into Tumblr. I don't think this is the last we'll hear from Tumblr.
No, I don't think so. I think Tumblr is the gift that keeps on giving, because that's the one that my son showed us this big thread about clown meat at one point. And I think we need to explore stuff like that. At
the point in production that we are recording this, that may still make it into the episode, because you mentioned that a little bit. It's one of the things that's like on the edge of like, do we need to cut this for time?
Right.
So there's a little behind the scenes bit too.
Interesting. I forgot that I mentioned that in that interview. Yeah.
And it was funny. So I'm trying to keep it.
Yeah. And I guess from an ethical standpoint, should a delicatessen sell clown meat if that's available?
Right.
Are clowns people too?
We should have asked Ben Radford about that, who we interviewed for a later episode about clown lore.
We should have, but we could probably still get Ben back at some point.
Yeah.
Or we could get some audio of Ben screaming as he's going through like a meat slicer.
I'll sound design him into a meat grinder. Or we could just send him an email, be like, Ben, what are your thoughts on clown meat? Please respond with an attached MP3.
He actually did talk about clown meat, but it was an entirely different kind of meat.
Yeah, he did. I wonder if we'll end up using that or not. Probably for Patreon.
I don't think so. Yeah, I think for Patreon, that'll make it in. For the normal show that's family friendly, probably not.
I don't think
so much.
No, but that we're a bit of a ways away from that. You'll be here. You who are listening will be hearing about that on October 16th-ish.
Yeah.
I believe.
16th or 30th. I don't remember which one that is.
I don't have the sheet in front of me because I had to reinstall Windows because my computer started acting funny. I had a tooth abscess. The mainline plumbing in my house backed up into the tub, and then my computer started getting screwy all in the span of the week we released episode 1.
It's a fun episode, and we still got it out
Not
mostly on time.
close to.
close to on time with no major issues, which is an accomplishment.
Yeah, no accidentally uploading the wrong file.
Actually, so Digby and I did get to insult you at the same time, which that
was fun because it was a total ad lib. In the script, it was just that you basically call Digby out to make sure he is going to keep track of it. And then Digby's like, yeah, I'd never miss a chance to make Mason look dumb. And then you and Digby went back and forth, and you were both just piling on me, and that's very funny.
Which is also fun because you know the person that plays Digby extremely well. And so that I'm sure that the opportunity to dig on you never goes without.
Yeah.
It never goes by.
Can never miss that.
I can't figure out you could never miss that opportunity.
I was trying to see if there's any other like little tidbits that were like true or whatever. There's that Bader Meinhof discussion at the end that just tapers off, which was me stream of consciousness writing at the end there. So yeah, this episode was a little bit scattershot, but identity, community, tying everything in. And it works for being scattershot because you and I don't know what we're going to talk about going into this Meme Expo, which is going to be a very fun sound design project. Going to try and get a lot of little ancillary voice parts and things in there. Some people have reached out about doing voice bits for the show, which is awesome. I'm going to reach out to those folks.
Yeah, so if you've reached out and you've not heard back from us yet, it's not because we're intentionally ignoring you. It's because we're trying to get some stuff wrapped up and then coordinate a process for getting back in touch with people as well.
Yeah, it's I've been buried, but I have plans for you, all of you who've reached out. It's not going to be any like massive roles, but we have there's going to be like a lot of little fun things.
Yeah, and we can as we go forward find fun things to do or create fun things to do as well.
Oh yeah. To be clear, I did say that this episode was scattershot, but that is planned. Like we have the whole season's outlined. I felt as though this was a good way to tie narrative into the content we had to present because it was like, well, we have kind of this scattershot that's sort of related. And then, in this narrative, what if we're throwing ideas around trying to find something? It seemed like a good way to bring those two things together. If that loops you in on the thought process of structuring this show. Because we have most of the interviews recorded. Well, probably half, little over half.
For the full season?
Yeah.
For the season, I was going through the outline the other day. At least 2/3 of the interviews are already recorded.
Yeah.
We have a good number of them. Some folks that, fingers crossed, we still have in the pipeline to get through. A lot of folks we've already contacted. There's some folks that are on our dream list that we want to get done. But I think we've got some alternates that we can go to as well.
Yeah. I mean, actually, it's really just the last 3. Well, the very last one we're working on setting up very soon. But 8 and 9. I think are the only ones we need to get more interviews for. And
episode 10 looks like it's going to be a really fun crossover episode or collaboration episode with another podcast if all that comes together.
Yes, that's going to be so good. I'm really excited for that.
Yeah, which does look like that's going to come together because we were just emailing back and forth about that.
This morning. Yeah.
Yeah, this morning. So fingers crossed, everybody's timelines work, and that'll be a really fun project that we can tell people about soon.
Yeah.
Or when it releases.
We'll have to see what happens. We'll have to play that. Yeah. I wonder when they're going to do their part.
We can talk about that when we know more. More.
Also, something in these after episodes in the future. I don't have any for this one. I don't think I will have any for this episode. But there's a lot of times where there's questions or things that will get left to the very last stage of getting cut. So they'll get isolated and cleaned up and like ready to go and then get taken out because of time or flow. And I feel like these after episodes would be a good spot to put those.
Yeah. If not, and we don't put it in an after episode, then we can throw it on Patreon or something like that so that we can make sure that we get those out there.
Yeah.
If you've already done all the work on excerpting them and cleaning them up, we'll find a way to reuse them.
Find somewhere to stick them.
Yeah. Not related to the episode, but on Spotify, there was a great comment that we got from a listener. I'll read that out too.
Yes.
Because these kind of things are super encouraging, and Spotify is a platform that allows people to interact directly with the episodes now. So it's really cool to see some of that come in organically from people that we don't know personally. And it says, I may not be the target audience, but this has rapidly become one of my favorite shows. It's like a wacky crossover of Our Fake History and Welcome to Night Vale. I love the variety of content. and being compared to those shows at that level is really, really cool.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. I am so happy about that. I don't know what higher bar we could aim for, you know?
I know.
That's pretty much it. Like yes, please. I'm kind of thinking, I'm trying to make sure that I can tuck that away in my head as when people ask me what the show is like.
A lot of people jumped on Discord recently.
Yeah, a bunch of people have
just cool.
Joined the server. I need to get in there more to chat. I've just been trying to buckle down on the production side.
You've been dealing with like plumbing and teeth. Oh, speaking of plumbing and teeth, we've mentioned this a couple times, but I don't think we've linked it in show notes yet. So we'll link the first thing that Mason and I worked on together, which was a PodCube episode that we did for an Eighth Layer Insights episode, where I was interviewing Brian Brushwood, who has a show called World's Greatest Con, and we wanted to do something fun for that. So Mason has a great show called PodCube that he does with his friends Jordan and Tucker. And this would be, if you've not listened to PodCube yet, this would be a fun gateway episode to listen to as you get into PodCube.
It's one of my top favorite. If there's ever someday we'll make a highlight reel of PodCube.
My favorite one is the flower shop episode.
The florist one?
Yeah.
That's funny. That one was like the gateway one, I think, for a lot of folks. That's also one I like. But the Zuckerberg baby teeth heist was just tops. Large water number, which I wish we had thought of a better punny name for playing off Ocean's 11 besides large water number. But hey, yeah, that'll be fun. I can throw a link to that in the show notes.
Yeah, put a link to that in the show notes and put a link to the Brian Brushwood Eighth Layer Insights episode. That way people get both of those bits of context.
Yeah, because that was also a great episode talking with Brian Brushwood. He's an interesting guy.
Yeah. I think that's it.
Yeah, we hit a fair amount of stuff. But yeah, episode 3 is on the way in another 2 weeks.
Who does episode 3 have? Do you have that off the top of your head?
I actually have the outline pulled up, so I can tell you right now. Yeah, episode 3 has Christina Downs and Josh Chapdelaine. That's us at the Meme Expo.
Right. Christina Downs is a folklorist out of Texas. Josh actually works at an organization called Digital Void, which you should definitely check out if you get a chance. They run their own conferences. They have a podcast that talks about a lot of digital culture as well. So definitely worth a look there.
They have like video series and what's the plural of series? Is it series?
Series of videos?
Yeah, well, multiple series.
Series. I think Apple might take them to court over that.
Yeah. Digital Void is awesome. The stuff they do is awesome. And I want to get to one of their live meetups at some point. The Meme in the Moment is fun.
Exactly. We talked about that. They run those out of, I think, comedy clubs, which is really fun.
Yeah, there's a lot of crossover between them and us in terms of tone and vibe. I think you'll like them. And once you meet Josh in next episode, I think you'll really like them. And Christina's amazing too. Oh, yeah. Head of the Texas Folklore Society.
Christina has a podcast that she's not doing anymore, but you should go check it out anyway. The episodes are really good. It's called Crime Lore. And she goes through a lot of true crime stuff, but looks at the folkloric aspects of those.
Crime Lore.
Crime Lore.
It's got a great name, too.
Well, we mentioned a couple podcasts as part of this. Are there any other podcasts related or adjacent or sound design-ish that you would want to recommend that people that like our show should check out? Mason doesn't like podcasts.
It's not that I don't like podcasts. It's that now that I don't drive for work, I just have no chance to listen. And I'm editing audio pretty much all day or like working adjacent to audio. So it's not like I can listen while I work, you know?
Yeah.
So I actually haven't listened to very many podcasts. The one I've been hooked on lately is 13, which is Brooks' podcast, The Voice of Digby, which is like this eerie, spooky stories.
13 is so good.
It's really good. Their sound designer and composer are the same person, Caleb Ritchie. He's off the charts. And it's got such a unique, like, slow burn vibe. It's very good. I love that. So if you're in the mood for something spooky as we're getting closer to October, 13 is great.
So there's one other podcast that I would recommend. Maybe every now and then we can recommend a few other shows too. But if you're into folklore, there's a podcast called Urban Legends that you should check out by Luke Mordew. And I think he's between seasons right now, but puts out a lot of good in-depth discussion about the history of different bits of urban legends. but then wraps them in his own narrative where he'll create a story based on the urban legend. So he'll start with an opening for a story about the urban legend, then go into the middle bit. He'll give the history and a lot of investigative journalism around that, and then he'll close out the story at the end. Similar to that, there's another podcast called Freaky Folklore. From Carmen Carrion on the EerieCast network, and she has a similar take on that. She'll start with a narrative bit that she's created on her own that's story-driven, then go into a lot of the history around the folklore, and then close out that narrative at the end. So two good shows that if you like this blend of real stuff and narrative, that you'll like one or both of those shows.
Yeah, those both sound wicked cool.
Yeah, both driven by people that obviously really love the subject and have a good creative streak as well.
Yeah, I'm going to have to check those out. I just need to I need to deep clean the house and have a little podcast binge day.
Yeah, you do. You need something to simulate the driving action that you've lost your drive.
I've lost my drive.
You've lost your podcast drive.
Oh, but the people outside haven't. I don't know if that got picked up. Holy smokes.
I heard something.
Yeah.
All right. Well, with that then, now that the outside is crouching into the inside, I guess we should sign off. So
yes.
I'm done. How about you?
I'm done. And this was Digital Folklore.
Folklore. I'm Perry Carpenter.
And I'm Mason Amadeus.
And this is Digital Folklore.